Hi and welcome. If you are learning English and you enjoy calm, meaningful stories, you are in the right place. Today we are learning English through a story that is not about kings or wars. It is about ideas. Ideas that slowly change the world. Long before computers existed, humans were already thinking deeply about intelligence. They asked simple but powerful questions. What does it mean to think? What does it mean to learn? Can intelligence exist outside the human mind? Thousands of years ago, people imagined tools that could move on their own. They told stories about statues that could speak. They dreamed of objects that could follow instructions without getting tired. At that time, these ideas were not science, they were imagination. But imagination is always where change begins. As centuries passed, humans began to understand logic and numbers. They discovered that many problems could be solved step by step. They realized that thinking often follows patterns. This was important because intelligence is not only emotion, it is also structure, rules, and decisions. Much later, humans started building machines. At first, these machines were very simple. They could only do one task. They could not learn. They could not decide. They only followed instructions. Still, humans did not stop dreaming. In the 19th century, machines appeared that could calculate numbers. They worked with clear rules. If the rules were correct, the machine made no mistakes. This made people wonder, if a machine can follow rules perfectly, could it follow complex rules too? Could it solve problems? Could it make choices? Then the 20th century arrived, and with it came modern computers. Early computers were huge. They filled entire rooms. They were slow by today's standards, but powerful for their time. For the first time, machines could store information. They could process data. They could follow long sequences of instructions. This changed everything. Scientists began asking new questions. If a machine can process information, could it behave intelligently? If we give it enough instructions, could it act like a thinking being? This idea was revolutionary. It suggested that intelligence might be built, not born, not grown, but designed. Many early thinkers believed intelligence was logical. They thought thinking was like solving a puzzle. If you knew the rules, you could reach the answer. So they tried to teach machines these rules. The first programs were simple. They played basic games. They solved small math problems. They followed exact instructions without hesitation. When people saw this, excitement grew. Some believed machines would soon think like humans. Others imagined a future where machines handled many human tasks. Hope was high. Expectations were huge. But reality was more complicated. Human intelligence is flexible. People learn from mistakes. They understand context. They adapt to new situations. Early machines could not do this. They only did what they were told, nothing more. Still, the idea did not disappear. The belief that intelligence could be created remained strong. Researchers continued experimenting. They continued questioning. They slowly realized something important. To create intelligence, humans first needed to understand it, and understand an intelligence would take time. As researchers continued exploring intelligence, they slowly understood one thing. Human thinking is not only about rules, it is also about experience. People learn by seeing patterns. They remember past situations. They adjust their behavior based on results. This realization changed the direction of research. Instead of telling machines exactly what to do, Scientists began asking a new question. What if machines could learn on their own? This idea was powerful. Early experiments focused on teaching machines through examples. Rather than giving clear instructions, researchers fed machines data. The machine would analyze it. It would look for similarities. It would try to predict outcomes. At first, progress was slow. Machines made many mistakes. They failed often. But something important was happening. They were improving. Each mistake helped the system adjust. Each success made it slightly better. This process was similar to how humans learn. Over time, researchers gave this approach a name. They called it machine learning. Machine learning did not rely on fixed rules. Instead, it relied on data. The more data a machine received, the better it became. This was a major shift in thinking. Computers were no longer just tools. They were becoming learners. Soon, machines began recognizing simple patterns. They could tell the difference between numbers. They could recognize letters. They could even identify basic images. This opened new possibilities. If a machine could recognize patterns, it could recognize faces. It could understand speech. It could detect trends in large amounts of information. As computers became faster and cheaper, data became more available. People generated information every day. Photos, messages, searches, videos. All of this data became fuel for intelligent systems. Researchers began building smarter models. These models tried to copy the human brain in a very simple way. They were inspired by neurons, tiny connections that pass signals in the brain. This idea led to neural networks. Neural networks were not perfect. They were hard to train. They needed large amounts of data. They required strong computers. For many years, progress was limited. Some people began to lose interest. Funding decreased. Optimism faded. But the idea never disappeared. Then technology caught up. Computers became much more powerful. Storage became cheaper. The internet connected the world. Suddenly, massive amounts of data were available. Neural networks returned, stronger than before. They could now recognize voices. They could translate languages. They could recommend videos. They could suggest products. People started interacting with intelligent systems every day, sometimes without realizing it. AI was no longer a future idea. It was quietly becoming part of daily life. As intelligent systems became more common, people slowly started to trust them. They used them to search information. They used them to navigate cities. They used them to communicate with others. But something deeper was happening behind the scenes. Machines were no longer only reacting. They were beginning to predict. By studying large amounts of data, systems could guess what might happen next. They could suggest the next word in a sentence. They could predict what video someone might like. They could warn about possible risks. This ability to predict made AI extremely valuable. Businesses started using intelligent systems to understand customers. Doctors began using them to detect diseases earlier. Banks used them to prevent fraud. Schools explored ways to personalize learning. AI was quietly spreading into every field. At the same time, concerns began to grow. People started asking difficult questions. Who controls these systems? Can they make mistakes? Can they be biased? Machines learn from data, and data comes from humans. If the data is unfair, the system can become unfair too. This created new responsibilities. Researchers began focusing not only on making AI smarter, but also safer. They worked on transparency. They worked on fairness. They worked on explainability. The goal was no longer just intelligence. The goal was trust. Another major change was the rise of conversational systems. Instead of clicking buttons, people could talk to machines. They could ask questions in natural language. They could receive clear answers. This made technology feel more human. Voice assistants entered homes. Chat systems appeared on websites. People started practicing languages with AI. They started learning, asking, and exploring. For many users, AI became a daily companion. Still, AI did not replace humans. It supported them. Creative work still needed imagination. Leadership still required judgment. Empathy still belonged to humans. AI worked best as a partner, not a replacement. This balance became important. Societies realized that technology must serve people, not control them. Rules and discussions began forming around the world. Governments, researchers, and citizens joined the conversation. The story of AI was no longer only about machines. It was about humans deciding how they want to live with them. As artificial intelligence became part of daily life, something else started to change. The way people worked began to shift. Tasks that once took hours could now be done in minutes. Reports were generated faster. Images were analyzed instantly. Messages were translated in seconds. This did not happen overnight. It happened quietly. Offices slowly adapted, factories introduced smart systems, creative fields explored new tools. Some people felt excited, others felt uncertain. Many workers asked an important question: what will happen to jobs? This question appeared again and again. The truth was complex. Some jobs changed, some jobs disappeared, but many new roles were created. People learned to work with intelligent systems. They focused more on decision-making, on creativity, on communication. AI handled repetitive tasks. Humans handled meaning. Education also began to transform. Students no longer learned only from books. They practiced with interactive systems. They received instant feedback. They learned at their own pace. Language learning became more accessible. People practiced speaking without fear. They repeated sentences. They listened. They improved. For many learners, AI became a private tutor. At the same time, questions about control grew stronger. If machines can influence decisions, who is responsible for those decisions? If an AI system makes a mistake, who should be accountable? These questions had no simple answers. Ethics became central to the conversation. Researchers, teachers, and leaders started setting boundaries. They discussed limits. They discussed responsibility. They discussed values. AI was no longer just a technical topic. It became a social one. Another major development was creativity. At first, people believed machines could never create. They thought creativity belonged only to humans. But intelligent systems surprised everyone. They generated music. They painted images. They wrote stories. They composed poems. This did not mean machines had emotions. It meant they learned patterns. They studied thousands of examples. They identified structures. They produced new combinations. Some people loved this. Others felt uncomfortable. Again, the question returned: what does it mean to be human? The answer was not replaced by AI. It was clarified by it. Human creativity comes from experience, from emotion, from meaning. Machines assist, humans decide. As these tools spread, global awareness increased. Countries invested in research. Universities opened new departments. Governments wrote policies. The race was not only about power, it was about responsibility. AI had become a mirror. It reflected human knowledge, human bias, human ambition, and like any mirror, it forced people to look closely. As artificial intelligence continued to grow, it slowly became something more familiar. It was no longer only a tool used by experts. It became something ordinary. People used it without thinking. They unlocked phones with their faces. They asked questions out loud. They received answers instantly. AI blended into daily routines. Behind this simplicity was incredible complexity. Millions of calculations happened in seconds. Systems learned from mistakes. They adjusted and improved. But even with all this progress, one truth remained clear. Artificial intelligence does not think like humans. It does not feel fear. It does not feel hope. It does not understand meaning the way people do. It recognizes patterns. It predicts outcomes. It follows logic. Human intelligence is different. Humans imagine futures that do not yet exist. They feel empathy. They make decisions based on values. This difference became more important than ever. As AI grew stronger, humans had to become more thoughtful. They had to decide how much control to give. They had to decide where to draw lines. They had to decide what should always remain human. These decisions were not made by machines. They were made by people. Parents thought about children and education. Teachers thought about learning and fairness. Doctors thought about care and responsibility. Leaders thought about power and limits. AI did not remove responsibility. It increased it. The future was no longer something that simply arrived. It became something that had to be shaped. Slowly, the conversation changed. Instead of asking, "What can AI do?" people began asking, "What should AI do?" This was a powerful shift. Technology stopped being the center. Human purpose became the center. AI became a reflection of choices. If humans chose wisely, AI could help solve problems. If humans ignored responsibility, AI could deepen mistakes. The story of artificial intelligence was never only about machines. It was always about humanity, about curiosity, about fear, about ambition, about learning. From ancient dreams to modern systems, this journey showed one clear lesson. Intelligence is not just about speed or accuracy. It is about understanding consequences. And as long as humans remain curious, careful, and responsible, AI will remain a tool, not a master. The story continues every day, with every question asked, with every decision made. And the future of AI will always depend on the choices humans make next.